$35 a week. That's about $5 a day, the price of one fancy coffee you forget you even bought. Now, picture that exact same habit growing into a portfolio worth close to $1 million that pays you over $8,000 a month. $5 in, $8,000 out. That's not a typo, and it's not a get-rich-quick gimmick. It works because of one simple truth that most people never get told. Time works against your paycheck, but it works for your investments. Once that clicks, everything else makes sense. Hey, I'm Richard. On this channel, I break down money moves for regular people, not the Wall Street crowd, not trust fund kids, just real strategies you can actually use this week. If that's your kind of channel, hit subscribe and stick around. Here's why most folks never even start. They look at a few bucks a week and think, that's nothing, why bother? And honestly, I get it. When you're already stretched thin, a $5 deposit feels like bailing out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. But that feeling comes from the fact that your world keeps getting pricier faster than your paycheck grows. When that happens, the thing that quietly saves you isn't the size of your deposit, it's showing up every single week. You can feel this with something as basic as your grocery cart. Think about your buddy Pete who buys the same $20 of groceries every week. Since 2020, food prices climbed 3.45%, then 3.94%, then jumped a brutal 9.95% in 2022, before easing to 5.76% in 2023, 2.26% in 2024, and 2.45% in 2025. So that $20 cart Pete filled in 2020 now runs him about $25.32. You don't need a chart to know that. You feel it at the register. Borrowing got heavier too. The Federal Reserve's own numbers show interest rates climbing from near zero in 2020 to about 4.09% by late 2025. That's like your mortgage, your car loan, and your credit card all gaining a little weight every month. And while everything got pricier, Paychecks limped along. The Economic Policy Institute's wage tracker has pay growth sitting around 3.8% in 2025, barely keeping pace with this year's inflation, and nowhere near the total price jump since 2020. Then there's the stock market, which scares people off completely. Look at the big crashes, the Great Depression, the dot-com collapse, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID crash in 2020, the inflation-driven slide in 2022. In the moment, every one of those felt like the end of the world. But the long chart tells a different story. Every single crash eventually recovered, and the trend kept climbing. The research on long-term returns lands around 10 to 11% a year, dividends included. It's like a guy walking up a staircase while playing with a yo-yo. The yo-yo bounces up and down the whole way, but the guy keeps climbing. That's exactly why weekly investing is so powerful. You don't have to predict inflation, call the top, or guess the dips. If prices rise, your deposit still goes in. If they fall, you're buying the same stuff on sale. If the market bounces back, you're already along for the ride. In a world that never sits still, that boring little habit becomes one of the few moves you can actually count on. And here's where the title earns its keep. When the average paycheck grows around 3 to 4% a year, but a long-term portfolio often grows 2 to 3 times faster, your investments start building towards something your salary will never touch. Stay consistent long enough, and you're talking $8,000 a month in passive income. Now, most people totally miss the next part. Even tiny weekly amounts roll into a snowball way bigger than you'd guess. Think about packing a snowball at the top of a hill. The first few rolls, it's pathetic, barely picking up snow. Take your friend Jenny, dropping $20 a week, which is $1,040 a year, the kind of money you spend without blinking. In year one, she's put in $1,040 and the balance nudges a little. Nothing dramatic, but the core of the snowball is packing together. By year 3, she's contributed $3,120, And with dividends reinvested and those early deposits getting room to grow, she's sitting around 3,750. That little extra on top, the part she didn't put in, that's the snowball starting to roll. By year 5, she's contributed 5,200, but the account is closer to 6,850. Now the thing has weight. Every new deposit lands on a bigger base, and every dividend buys more little slices of ownership that spit out even more dividends. The first 5 years won't blow your hair back, but they build the runway for everything that comes later. Knowing how the snowball forms is only half of it, because the mindset behind it matters just as much. People don't quit weekly investing because it's hard. They quit because the early numbers feel too small to take seriously. Jenny drops her $20. The balance barely twitches, and her brain immediately wants to grade the progress. We're wired for quick wins, so when growth looks slow, we assume it's broken. We also panic at every headline. A sudden drop feels alarming. A recession headline feels like a siren. A rough week feels like a sign to bail. But that's linear thinking, expecting the market to move in a neat straight line. Compounding doesn't work in lines, it works in curves, climbing while it wobbles, and none of that shows up early. The real shift happens when you stop measuring success week by week and start measuring it by whether you stayed consistent. You stop asking, "Is this growing fast enough?" and you start asking, "Did I invest this week?" That one swap kills the pressure for instant results and replaces it with a routine you fully control. That consistency is what eventually lets your portfolio outgrow your paycheck. Not because you outsmarted anyone, but because you stuck around long enough to let compounding do the heavy lifting. Once that mindset is locked in, picking investments gets a lot easier. Instead of hunting for one perfect stock, look for a handful of qualities that create stability and long-term growth. The first is diversification, which just means owning a ton of companies instead of betting on a few. It's the difference between a potluck with 30 dishes and a dinner where you bet the whole night on one casserole. With hundreds or thousands of businesses, no single flop can sink you. One company struggles, another shines, and overall you keep cruising. Broad index funds handle this for you. No need to play stock picker. The second quality is broad exposure, which is a different animal than diversification. Exposure is about what kinds of companies you own. The market is like a relay race where different runners take the lead on different laps. Some years the big companies sprint ahead. Some years the mid-size ones take over. Some years the sustainable players outrun everybody. A strong portfolio spreads across company sizes, sectors, and styles, so you're never stuck holding the slow runner. Next is real historical performance, companies that have actually grown their earnings and strengthened their fundamentals over the years, not hype. Then there's dividend growth, where companies bump up their payouts every year, and those bigger checks buy more shares and crank the compounding loop tighter. And finally, low fees, because even tiny fees pile up over decades, so low and zero-fee funds keep more of your money working for you. Stack all of that together, and you've got a portfolio built to take a punch, catch the long-term growth, and compound steadily as the years roll by. That's exactly where these 5 Fidelity funds shine, and together they cover everything a solid portfolio needs. The first is FZROX, the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund. This is your foundation, a broad fund that owns large, mid, and small-cap companies across every major U.S. sector. Its whole job is to track the entire U.S. market with zero management fees. It currently yields 1.04%, grows its dividends at 7.55% a year, and has delivered a strong 13.5% annual price appreciation. FZROX lays the groundwork by covering the full market and building steady growth year after year. Then there's FSMDX, the Fidelity Midcap Index Fund. Instead of the giants, this one invests in mid-size businesses, stable enough to be reliable, but still small enough to grow fast. It usually holds around 300 companies across tech, industrials, consumer sectors, and finance. It carries moderate, growth-minded risk, and the numbers back it up: a 2.42% yield, a quick 17.21% dividend growth rate, and 7.4% annual appreciation. FSMDX brings the expansion phase. The company's still climbing. FITLX, the Fidelity U.S. Sustainability Index Fund, gives the portfolio a modern edge. It invests in companies screened for strong environmental, social, and governance practices, including a lot of leaders in tech, healthcare, and communications. It's built for steady appreciation, with a stake in the companies shaping the future. FITLX yields 1.14%, grows dividends at 13.74%, and delivers 13.06% annual appreciation, adding resilience and growth from sectors that have carried real momentum over the last decade. FGRX, the Fidelity Growth and Income Portfolio, brings balance. It leans into high-quality large-cap companies with steady earnings, so you get a mix of reliable dividend payers and consistent growers. The idea is simple: dependable income without giving up growth. The numbers match: a 3.13% yield, a very strong 19.68% dividend growth rate, and 8.17% annual appreciation. It lifts both sides at once: income and growth together. Finally, FDGFX, the Fidelity Dividend Growth Fund, is your stabilizer. It focuses on companies with long track records of raising dividends and solid financials. It leans towards safety and consistency over aggressive growth, which keeps the portfolio steady when the market cools off. FDGFX yields 3.2%, grows dividends at 18.03%, and offers 2.78% annual appreciation. Its job isn't to soar, it's to strengthen your dividend income year after year. Now let's do the math. And don't worry, it's grade school stuff. We'll keep it simple with a plain average. List out the 5 yields. FZROX at 1.04%, FSMDX at 2.42%, FITLX at 1.14%, FGRX at 3.13%, and FDGFX at 3.2%. Add them up and you get 10.93. Since we're treating each fund as an equal slice, we divide by 5, and 10.93 divided by 5 gives you 2.186, which rounds to 2.19%. So the average portfolio dividend yield is 2.19%. Run that exact same process for the dividend growth rate and the annual appreciation. Add the 5 numbers and divide by 5, and you land on a 15.24% average dividend growth rate and an 8.98% average annual share price appreciation. Those are the numbers we build the projection on. Together, they show a portfolio that grows in value and grows what it pays you over time. So let's meet Josh. He's putting in $5 a day, which is $35 a week. And since the portfolio has 5 funds, that's basically $1 a day going into each one. It's pocket change, the kind of money most people spend without thinking. But showing up with that tiny habit is what turns it into something real. By the end of year 1, Josh has contributed about $1,825, laying the groundwork. By year 10, the portfolio is projected to hit $32,000, with reinvested dividends finally building momentum. By year 20, Josh has contributed $36,500 total, and compounding pushes the portfolio to about $160,000, throwing off nearly $9,000 a year in dividends. The last decade is where it really flexes. By year 30, Josh's portfolio is projected to reach $942,000, paying around $98,000 a year, or roughly $8,000 every month in dividends alone. And once he hits that 30-year mark, the breakdown gets wild. Over 3 decades, Josh put in a total of $54,750 out of his own pocket. His portfolio multiplied that by 17 times to $942,000. Take that $942,000, subtract his $54,750 in contributions, and you're left with roughly $887,250 created entirely by compounding, reinvested dividends, and decades of steady market growth. So the vast majority of his wealth didn't come from what he paid in. It came from the portfolio working for him while he lived his life. And that's the moment his investments out-earn a full-time job, all because he stayed consistent with a tiny daily amount. So here's a question to sit with. What's the one tiny, boring habit you could actually start this week and never have to think about again? Because if you liked Josh's $35 story, there's a wilder one coming. There's a single index fund, just one, that has the potential to turn $10 into a $2.2 million portfolio paying over $6,000 a month in dividends. All right, that's it from me today. If this saved you a few bucks or just made the topic make sense, drop a like. It genuinely helps the channel keep going. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Click the video on your screen to find out which fund